So 18th chapter, it's a very long chapter. I'm hoping we can finish it today. I'm not sure. Let's see. Again, this chapter is like a summary of the Gita. It's like a report on the Gita. And I don't know how many of you have done this in your professional career, but I used to give a lot of presentations when I was a manager and program manager. So you always start with the agenda, right? Like we're going to cover this, right? That was like chapter 2. And that at the end, when you finish the presentation or something like that, you summarize, right? That we covered this and this and this and this and this, right? So similar approach with the Gita. So this chapter, the 18th chapter, is kind of like the report on the Gita. So it goes over the same kind of topics, it'll cover the Karma Yoga, it'll cover the Jnana Yoga. And the topic for this chapter is the tapasya and so basically what Arjun does is he starts with the question to Bhagwan and he says, okay, so basically he says, oh Lord, I desire to know the true nature of sannyas and tyag. So then, Krishnji basically replies and he cites some views of people, what other people's rishis or shastras' views are on sannyas and tyag. And so then he starts talking about, Sri Krishna starts talking about sannyas and tyag. And fundamentally, there is no difference between sannyas and tyag. Okay, so what Sri Krishna says is that he goes into this topic, he goes into the topic of nitya karma. Nitya karmas are the ones which are your obligatory duties. Nitya karma, the obligatory, the rights of different grahasthas is different, but essentially there are yajna, dan and tapa. So these are the 3 obligatory duties. And he says, you should never give those up. When you do tyag, you don't give up these, So he's sort of differentiating between what exactly do you give up. So nitya karma, you should never give up. But you have to note here that in the shastras, for the people who are purified, because see, these things are really to purify you. Is to remove your karmas, is to remove your vasanas. But if a person has already become sattvic, then these are not needed anymore. The gyan, dan and tapa. So yajna, dan and tapa. So then Bhagwan goes into differentiating between when he talks about renunciation, tyag, he talks about the 3 types of renunciations, the tamasic, the rajasic and the sattvic. Okay, so that we can refer to that later, but basically it's, if you like, you can go over the chapter and see which ones is what, which is the sattvic, rajasic and tamasic of the renunciations. I'm just going to summarize here, but basically, he talks about these 3 categories. And then what he does is that after that, he starts with he goes into Karma Yoga again. Okay, so there's a elaborate description of Karma Yoga that follows. So how is the tyag aspect involved in a karma yoga, right? So the main thing about tyag in karma yoga is the renunciations of the fruit or the results, right? When you do not expect a certain result, when you don't have anxiety or worry, because the anxieties and worries are always about results, right? About the future. So tyag means, the tyag here in Karma Yoga means that you let go of the attachment of the result. You let go of the expectations. you let go of the worries of and anxieties of whether this will happen or not, in spite of your efforts. So that is the tyag aspect in Karma Yoga. So when a Karma Yogi does this, basically as he pursues it, then in the end you do get self-knowledge. And a Karma Yogi is not, now this Karma Yogi, a true Karma Yogi, is no longer affected by the consequences. And the consequences that are described here are, the consequences can either be good, which is beneficial. They can, good beneficial means, if you read in detail, basically good or beneficial means from your spiritual aspect, that your vasanas will be positive or they will remove the vasanas. So that is a good result. Evil meaning that you will get negative vasanas. So the consequences, in addition to being material or emotional, they also have ultimately an impression on you, and those impressions last even after you die. So that's what is mentioned here, is that once he is not affected by the consequences, whether they are good, evil, or a mixture of the two. And then after the Karma Yoga part, then Sri Krishna goes into the gist of the Jnana Yoga. And he lists, basically in this verse, that verse number 13, he lists the five parts of us which are involved in every action. Of course, it's the body, the breath, the mind, the sense organs, the jiv, which is the ego, and then the soul, which is the atma, which is the source from where everything originates. So these are the five broad layers or koshas that are involved in every action. So whenever you go and perform any action in the gross world, it involves all these layers of existence. All these five layers of existence are involved in every action. Though the self remains a witness, but it is the source. And the self remains a witness, but the jiva, the individual ego, that identifies with all these other layers of existence, and the ego thinks that it is doing these actions. It does not realize that all the actions, all thoughts, everything is actually coming from the self. So the witnesshood is lacking. So it's thinking that basically I am the ego and I'm functioning through the mind, intellect, body, and all this stuff, right? And that's how we get stuck with the wrong identification. We identify with this lower self and not the higher self. But a person who is wise, who is experienced and knowledgeable, knows and has experience that it is not the false, it's not the ahamkar, it's not the ego that it's operating from. It can clearly distinguish between the layers. It has recognized, a wise person has recognized all the levels of his existence, and this person, this wise person who also has the experience of the self, is then free from all karmas, because there's it's only the jiv that accumulates karma, not a person who has transcended the jiv, who has transcended the ego, the individual self, the duality, for whom there is non-duality, where he's established or he's functioning from the higher self. There is no accumulation of karma. in spite of all his activities, he can do everything, he can enjoy everything, but nothing sticks. There's no consequences as such, right? So that's what he is talking about, and this is Jnana Yoga. Jnana Yoga is knowing that you're not the doer, knowing that you are the self, knowing that the self is operating through all these layers of existence. Now then he kind of switches, Bhagwan now kind of switches directions, and then Bhagwan introduces the 6 factors necessary for the transactions. Meaning whenever you transact in the world, there are 6 factors which are involved. So one is of the knowing and one is of the doing. So 2 categories. So the first category of 3 is the knower, the knowledge and the known. And the second category in the doing is the doer, the action and the instrument of action. So of these are the 6 factors. So then Bhagwan takes up 3 of these aspects, the knowledge, the action and the doer, and he talks about the gunas based on this, the knowledge, action and the doers. So the 3 gunas. So he speaks on the 3 kinds, the 3 gunas of each of these 3. And then Bhagwan again takes up the intellect aspect, and finally the happiness, the 3 types of happiness. So we can go through these categories in a bit, but that is how the next section is after the Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga. The next section is, he talks about all these factors which are necessary when you transact in the world. He speaks of 6 factors, and then whenever you do transactions in the world, all these factors, whether it's the knowledge, action, doer or intellect, they have 3 qualities, 3 natures with which you can do it in a sattvic way, you can do it in a rajasic way, and you can do it in a tamasic way, and they all express themselves differently, right? In general, sattvic is obviously the pure, the calm, the wise, it's the highest. The rajasic is the one which is related to action, a lot of passion. It is sort of your hyperactive mind, or speech, or in taste also. So it's the one that creates the most amount of agitation or action, and tamas is very dubious, because sometimes you can mistake tamas with sattva, but tamas is the person, a sattvic person will be calm and won't seem very active or hyper, but a tamasic person will also not be, will seem they're calm, but they're actually very low in energy, very lazy, there is low, everything is low, on the low side, lower energy, inertia, heaviness, the thoughts and actions, the intellect, all of these things, these knowledge, action, doer and intellect is of the tamasic nature, impure, dark, that category, right? I think it's pretty self-evident. It's nothing, outstanding that needs a lot of explanation. So, everything that you have seen from chapter 14 onwards, you'll see that a lot of this is covered with these 3 gunas which are continuously being talked about, because all of Prakriti is basically a combination of these 3 gunas. So Prakriti, all of creation, is, you can think of it like, like you can have Like you have an ice cream or something like that, where that has 3 ingredients. And everything in this big soup of creation, everything will have a certain proportion of all these 3 gunas. So for example, like let me just take the example of light, white light. White light is pure sattva. Okay, so it does have maybe a pinch of black or maybe a pinch of red, but it's mostly sattvic. But it does have the others. Like yin and yang, how you see yin and yang, black and white? That is like sort of a display of sattva and tamas. It's missing the rajas aspect in the yin and yang. In the yin there is a dot of yang, and in the yang there's a dot of yin. You must have noticed in the yin yang, right? So both of them have a little bit of the others, but in different proportions. So if you look at food, it's not that something is 100% sattvic or 100% tamasic. It'll have a little bit of one or the other. So it's a range, it's a range. So like you have Roy G. Biv, like you have the 3 primary colors. You think of it like that, where in something the white, one color is more, but the other 2 colors is less. But all of creation is a combination of these 3 gunas in various proportions of these 3. Do you understand that aspect? Yeah, okay. So that's
by 3 gunas you are referring knower, action, and the doer, or are you?
No. The 3 gunas is the sattva, rajas, and tamas.
So those 3 gunas. Okay,
yes,
sorry.
Yes, no problem. So everything in creation, whether you're acting, thinking, whether it's an object, whether it's food. But here Bhagavan talks about knowledge, action, doer, and intellect, and various other things. But essentially everything that exists, everything that happens, everything which is manifest, even feelings is manifest, thoughts are manifest, actions are manifest, objects are manifest. Everything in creation is a combination of these 3 gunas, which is sattva, rajas, and tamas. So something can be more sattvic and have, less rajas and least amount of tamas, or something can be mainly tamasic and have a little bit of rajas and very little sattva, and so forth. There's various combinations of the 3. Okay, where was I? Right. That's verse number 40. Then so then, verses 41 to 49, again, Bhagavan is summing up the essence of Karma Yoga. And then from verses 50 to 55, it's about Jnana Yoga. So, like I said, it's again a summary of all of this knowledge. Let's see, what does he speak about? So then here, this is a very important section, which is verses 41 to 44, which I want to talk about in detail because it's very important. So let me go to verse number 41. Let's see. Sorry, I have to scroll down. Oh, I hope I have these. In the version of the Gita that I have, it's not there. Okay. The online Gita version actually ends at a particular verse. So I will just, I'll speak impromptu. I don't remember the exact verses, obviously. So verses number 41 to 44, they speak about the Varna system. Actually, I have it on my blog. Let me see if I can get there. So I have written a very comprehensive blog on this. Because this caste system is very, very important, and people just completely malpractice it. So I want you guys to take away from this session a very solid understanding of the Varna system. Okay, so here I got it. So verse number 41, okay, of scholars, which is Brahmins, of leaders, which are Kshatriyas, and of traders, which are Vaishyas, and also of the workers, the Shudras, O Parantapa. The duties are distributed according to the qualities born of their own nature. This is very important to know. See, the caste system, as it was called by the British, is not a caste or caste system. It's a Varna system. That's the first fallacy. Varna means based on a person's gunas and of course karma also, but fundamentally gunas, because karma is always based on gunas. You cannot have karma based on nothing. Karma always is based on gunas. So gunas is the base. Based on your nature, you have 4 personality types defined in the Gita, in the Shastras, in the Vedas also. So what do they say? It means there are 4 main personality types, like Brigmeyer's personality. I don't know if you've heard of personality types. There are personality tests. There, when you go to a company or workshops, they'll give you a personality test, and they'll see, based on your nature, you're a leader, you're this, or you're dominant on that, or whatever. This is something very similar. It's saying essentially that there are 4 broad categories of personality types. One is the scholars, that's the first one. The second one is the leaders. The third is the traders, and the fourth is the workers. Okay. So now do you understand that point? I want to make sure you guys get this point. There are 4 personality types that are by the scholars and scientists and these seers. They have created their own personality types. Okay. So Varna is nothing but a personality type. There are 4 broad personality types. It's not based on last name. It is not based on your birth, who you were born to. Of course, you inherit DNA and you might get some tendencies from your DNA. And if you grow up in a family throughout which does something, then you obviously acquire those things, but it's not 100% based on your DNA or your environment, your family environment, that you end up like that. The one base thing is that it depends on your own nature, not on your father's nature or your grandfather's nature or your mother's nature or what kind of family you belong to, whether you belong to a business family or whatever. It's based on your nature. Do you understand this point? It's very critical. So you don't say somebody's last name is such and such and bang, they belong to this caste. No, this is not what the Gita says. This is not what the Shastras say. It is come up with a personality type. That's all it is. And so the first one, which is the Brahmanas, it says it defines the nature, the gunas, and how they express themselves. So it says, you see, when you take a personality test, like I said, Brigmeyer's, it will recommend certain professions to you. It'll say, for your personality type, you would be good in teaching, or you would be good in business, or you would be good in such and such thing. Same thing here. It says serenity, self-restraint, austerity, purity, forgiveness, and also uprightness, knowledge, realization, and a belief in God are the duties of Brahmanas born of their own nature. So as soon as you hear these brahmanas, don't go into your conditioned mind and think brahmanas means this and that. No. You must uncondition and erase your mind from the years and eons of this malpractice. You must erase all those impressions. It is these gunas in a person, if these gunas are the most prominent one in his personality, because they will have other gunas also which may be associated with the Kshatriya or so forth. But if the main nature, if your dominating nature is that of, knowledge, you're intellectual, it's about belief in God, it's serenity, self-restraint, austerity, purity, forgiveness, uprightness, they're interested in knowledge, realization, belief in God. That type of nature is best suited for certain professions, which are intellectual professions. That's all it's saying, essentially. That's nothing else. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, if you have this kind of nature, you're suited for this kind of profession, So those are the Brahmins. Now you see, when you see people around you, you should recognize the Brahmins amongst you now. If they have this type of nature, they are a Brahmin. Okay? Do you understand? Yeah? Okay. Then it says the second nature is prowess. Prowess means courage, strength, valor, having no fear. People who are brave, splendor, firmness, dexterity, and also not fleeing from battle. And then generosity, lordliness. See here, generosity, it's important aspect. Lordliness, that lordliness meaning basically those who are sort of good leaders and rulers, administrators, so forth. These are the qualities and duties of the Kshatriya, born of their own nature. So when you see somebody who has these kind of leadership, a leadership type of nature, and also, who are good at administration and so forth, they are the Kshatriyas. And one thing is, the Kshatriyas, they are, let me just say one thing. So when we talk about the Brahmins, they are more sattvic, okay? They have more sattva in them, purity, more sattva. The one who are Kshatriyas, they are a mixture of sattva and rajas. Remember I told you that gunas is not absolute, like only sattva, only rajas, only tamas. Everything is a combination of all three. So in Brahmins it's mostly sattva, less rajas and least amount of tamas. The Kshatriyas is a combination mainly of sattva and rajas. They have sattva in them as well, because they are the ones who provide money to society. They are the donors, because they are the leaders. They are the ones who donate to the Brahmins, because Brahmins are not interested in leading and earning. So they have the generosity. They are the ones who will give lots of money to sustain, the society. They are the ones who are the givers, for non-profit organizations, to religious, spiritual organizations. They are the ones who would do that. So that is the generosity aspect. They're fearless, they're courageous, they're leaders, they're good decision makers, and so forth. So these are the Kshatriyas, the Rajas and the Sattva. Then the Rajas aspect of it is the Vaishyas, this thing. So it says, verse number 44, right? Of scholars, yeah. 44. It's got both. So agriculture, cattle raising, trade. Basically they're traders. They're good in business. Are the duties of the Vaishyas, born of their own nature. And service is the duty of the Shudras, meaning they are good with their hands and feet. So Shudras are more tamas, actually. So here you have it, you see. When you when you see people around you, so the blue collar, the people who are in the laborers, the more, those kind of people, they are the Shudra kind, and they're there in every society. It's not based on their last name or anything like that. Shudra is just, it's not a derogatory term, that's their nature. That's the level where they're at in this lifetime. It's more tamasic. Basically, they don't have the even the rajas in them, which the Vaishyas have, which, the rajas means earning, profit, trade, agriculture, all this kind of stuff. This is the rajasic nature. So each man devoted to his own duty attains perfection. How he attains perfection while being engaged in his own duty. So this is there, in my blog I actually have Swami Chinmayanand speaking of these verses. So if you want to watch that, it's there. I can send you the link. But this is very essential that you understand this and you take this into society and people that you go and talk to, because we are inundated with this caste system talk, and I want you to take away this very important point from this chapter. Okay, so if there's no questions, we'll carry on. So Karma Yoga is basically performing one's duty and offering that to the Lord. This renders the mind fit for knowledge. Okay, if you are so obsessed about doing, and I'm the doer, and obsessed about the results of your actions, that kind of person is not ready for knowledge yet. They're very much in the I-ness, the ego. The desires are very high. So once the desires for results has been satiated or been consumed a bit, then that person, that mind, is opening up to something more, higher than the I. What is that? So that is the person who would be ready for knowledge, is the one who is a Karma Yogi. Karma Yogi is the one who has surrendered the actions to the divine, who has offered the results of his actions to the divine, who has offered his actions, the result of his actions to the divine. So then that person is ready and fit for knowledge. So then so with Karma Yoga, then it talks about the importance of duty, the swadharma. So it's not just important for yourself, but it's also important for the society that you fulfill your duties. So he speaks about swadharma here, which is verses 47-48. So the thing is that you never confuse your duty with somebody else's duty. In the sense that, you see, what it means is, you must know your own nature and you must follow your own nature, and you should not compare yourself with anybody else. And once you understand, okay, I am the Brahmin category or mixture of this or that, or I am mainly the Kshatriya, or this is truly my nature. And once you know your duties as per your varn and as per your ashram, because duties is depending on your varn and ashram. Ashram means if you're a student, what are your duties as a student? If you're a grahast, what are your duties as a grahast? And so forth. So the varn and ashram combination makes your duty. So if you don't do your duties, then you kind of mess up your family, you mess up the society and so forth. So that is why it is very important to do your part in your own self-evolution and also contribute to the family and society. And then the Jnana Yoga also, the purified seeker, right? The person who has purified to a certain level and also who is detached and self-controlled. Those are always the two factors for Jnana Yoga. If you want knowledge, you have to have attained a certain level of detachment, and you have to have attained a certain level of self-control of your senses and of your mind. So now, after this, the topic is, now he introduces Jnana Yoga. And here it starts with Nididhyasanam. So in Gyan Yoga, I had told you before, the sadhana is Shravan, Manan and Nididhyasanam. So Nididhyasanam is to experience what you have heard. That is, so first step is obviously you hear, second thing is you remove doubts, whether it's through discussion, whether it's through reflection, or whatever method you want. So make sure that you remove any doubts you have. And once that clarity comes in your mind, then you can sit and meditate on it and be meditative about it. It's not always just meditation. Nididhyasana means being in that state of reflection or in a state of meditation where you assimilate the knowledge into your own nature. So, for example, if you react, if you get angry or agitated, or you have certain other patterns where you feel sad or something happens, you react, or somebody says something to you, you get hurt. Being meditative means reflecting on that, listening to the knowledge, because a lot of times, if someone has really hurt you, sometimes you love somebody, they don't love you back, you're hurt, or you don't get a promotion at work, you feel sad, or somebody dies, you're sad, or whatever it is. Whenever you are in these states, the knowledge that comes to you always sinks deeper, because that's when you're most susceptible, you're most open to knowledge. So you do the reading, you gain the knowledge, then you reflect on it, and then observe your reactions, be meditative and observe, oh, I am feeling like this, oh, I said it like this, or I thought this, or I shouldn't have done this, or I shouldn't have reacted, and why did I react? And really tracing it back, being in that meditative state, going into the self, going to your subconscious, you can only do that through meditation, going into your subconscious, going deeper and deeper. And when you go into meditations, when you go into your subconscious with that intention, with that reflection, then those impressions erase, because you're deliberately bringing them up and you're washing them away. You're bringing them up and you're washing them away. And as you observe, you will see them evaporate like a mist. And that is how this Nididhyasanam, this meditative aspect, this meditation aspect, when you go to a theta level, theta is the subconscious, where you go through meditation. So it's self-induced healing, it's self-healing. And there are all kinds of words for this nowadays, but that's essentially what it is. It's self-healing. So you reflect, you go from your conscious mind in the meditative stage, you go to the subconscious, and the patterns, the impressions from where your reactions came will come up, It's like opening the lid of a trash can. They will rise. You will see it. Now when you're meditative, you can see, oh, it's coming from here. You can witness it. You can witness it come up and you can release it. Okay, so this Shravan Manan Nididhyasanam. So this is how this Vedic knowledge is being applied today. This is self-healing. Okay, so that's Nididhyasanam. So basically it's saying that you restrained all your organs and given up all disturbing thoughts like desire, anger, so forth. Essentially you're not in an agitated state, you're more in a reflective and witness state. You're not like in this very emotional state. Then you can reflect, you can observe it, you can release it. So if you're established in that self, so once you become more and more established in the self, when you start operating from the self and not being operating from the ego level, then you're free from grief and desire. That's what you want to get to. Otherwise, when you operate from the ego level, then there's always misery. So one who is established in the self, then that person is the same to all beings. He enjoys the highest devotion to the Lord. So, having known the Lord and his true nature, he becomes one with him. See, in every chapter of the Gita, there is a description of the enlightened one, the one who's achieved Advait. So, this verse, number 55, is he becomes one with him, means non-duality. You have merged with yourself. You've not merged, I shouldn't say. Obviously you still have body, mind, breath, ego, intellect, and you're using the ego, because you have to have the ego to operate. But you're operating from yourself. You have removed the sort of the barrier, or the you've transcended the ego, the separation. So when you operate from the higher self, when you operate from the Atma level, then you have merged with that, right? That's why it says has become one with him. Atma and Ishvara are same. There's no difference. It's non-dual. It's Advait. So when you have merged with that true identity, that highest point perspective, then you are operating from your true nature. This is very important. It's giving you the process whereby how do you release all your impressions and karmas, and slowly you will realize your true self, your true nature. You would operate from that higher self, and you have become one with it. So the entire process is given here, and that's the Jnana Yoga verses. And like the end of knowledge, the culmination or the fruit is through all of this practice, you will attain that non-dual self, that Advait, that you have merged. Okay? And then the verses from 56, it comes back to Karma Yoga. So now it's back to Karma Yoga again. And here from verses 56 to 63, it's emphasizing the aspect of devotion, attitude of surrender. Constantly remembering the Lord. If you dedicate all your actions to Him, that devotee attains the Lord ultimately by effortlessly crossing all the obstacles. So if you try to evade your duties, which are based on your nature, on your gunas, if you try to you don't live per your gunas or your nature, then it's not really a life that is worth its purpose. The purpose of your life is to live as per your nature. So surrendering to the Lord, in your heart, who is the controller, the devotee should try to attain the supreme peace by His grace. So here then he'll culminate. The culmination of this is essentially where he says, concludes his teaching with and directs Arjun. He says, okay, you do whatever you like. After all of this stuff, and this is a very famous verse, verse number 63, of all of this stuff, as a dear friend and as an advisor and a dear friend to Arjun, Shri Krishna says, see, I have given you all the knowledge. Now you choose, you do. You have free will, you choose and you do as you wish. As all good teachers should. They should lay the knowledge in front of the student and then give the will to the student, the free will to the student to choose as they wish and to do. So again, because Krishnji has such immense love for Arjun, as a friend, as a dear friend, and as a relative also, he repeats his teaching emphatically, because then he's speaking here more from a deep love for him. And this verse is very famous. He says, Sarva dharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja aham tva sarva papebhyaha mokshayishyami masuchaha. So he says, just surrender all your actions in me. You don't have to, worry about the results. You don't have to do anything. Once you surrender everything into me, because you are so dear to me, I shall redeem you from all the past karmas and vasanas, and then you should attain that non-dual self. You should attain that, and in that shelter I shall take you. It's a very nice verse. It's essentially talking about both knowledge and karma yoga, bhakti yoga. Everything is included in this one verse. It's sort of the culmination of the 18th chapter. Fix your mind in me. Be my devotee. Be my worshipper. Surrender to me. You shall reach me alone. Truly, I promise to you. You are very dear to me. Having renounced all the actions, if you seek me, the non-dual, as your shelter, I shall liberate you from all sins. Do not grieve. So these verses 65 and 66, they're very beautiful. They are the sort of the climax and the cherry on the cake of the Gita. So they have both the Karma Yoga and the Jnana Yoga and Bhakti Yoga, everything encapsulated into one of these two verses. And then, having concluded all his teachings, Bhagwan then states the qualifications necessary to receive these. The one who has faith, who has discipline, who has devotion, and the desire to know should be given this knowledge. And this is important because, not everybody's ready for the Gita. Not everybody's willing to listen to a learned person like Sri Krishna. Not everybody is at a stage of evolution where they would absorb this knowledge, or because they're at a different place. So here is where it says, if people are not having these qualifications where they have no faith, they have no self-discipline, they have no devotion, and they have absolutely no desire to know, then why would you even bother giving people that knowledge? It's like talking to a wall. They're not there. And then finally it's the phal. Everything phalashruti is there, whether it's the artis that you do, the stotrams that you recite. What is the phal? What is the fruit? What is the benefit that you get? So the phalashruti kind of comes here at the end of the Gita. Now comes the phalam. One who imparts and the one who receives this wisdom attains the Lord himself. Even the one who merely hears this with faith will attain the higher worlds. That is the phalashruti. Now, being satisfied with the teachings, Krishnji asks Arjun whether his delusion has gone. And then Arjun says gracefully, he acknowledges promising to abide by the Lord's teachings, And then that's the end of the Gita. And then Sanjaya, who's basically in the palace relating all of this to Dhritarashtra, he says, how blessed he is to have heard this glorious dialogue, samvad between Arjuna and the Lord. And so he says, Sanjaya says he remembers the whole dialogue and the cosmic vision with thrill that he saw in the earlier chapter which is described. And he concludes the Gita with, where there is Krishna, the Lord of Yoga, Yogeshwar, there will be an Arjun, the wielder of the bow, where there will be, and when these two are there, where there is Krishna and where there is Arjun, there will always be permanent wealth, victory, prosperity and justice. So that's kind of symbolic, right? Wherever there is knowledge, there will be a seeker. And we've concluded at 8. Fantastic. That's a long chapter, but I wanted to finish today, so I'm glad I did it. So, any questions? It's a lot, huh?
It, it's nice, but I mean, it's basically like you mentioned, it's a summary. So
Yeah, it's a summary, it's a wrap up.
yeah, so basically, whatever is coming is like we have discussed it in the past, and now together.
Mm-hmm. Yes. It can be confusing also, this chapter, because of so many topics that are covered. Sometimes it can be confusing as well. I like few things about this chapter. One is the Varna system which is described, and the other one is, of course, my favorite verse of the Gita, Sarva Dharman Parityajya. Sometimes, you feel like, gosh, what do I do? And at that moment, I remember this verse, because with sincerity, of seeking, and sometimes you feel like you're not getting anywhere, and then when you have the devotion, when you have the desire to attain that non-dual self, when you have all those qualities, you can simply surrender and know these words of Krishnji. He says, I will save you. Always remember, I will um, redeem you. I will redeem you, if you do surrender. Because truly, I'm telling you, complete surrender is the key. Only when you surrender the ego, you have to completely surrender the ego. And that person who can completely surrender the ego will attain that non-dual self.
Vinita, when you say surrender the ego, your desires, because desires come from the ego. So whatever comes from the ego is what you are surrendering.
Yes, desires always come from the ego. So, what does surrendering of desires mean?
My understanding is that you do what you have to do to the best of your ability, and then you let go.
Yes. So, it's always surrendering the desire for the result.
Yes.
So, surrendering desires is often misunderstood. You must remember, surrendering desires means surrendering the desire for the result. To gain something, to attain something, it is, if you really analyze it, the desire is not about not doing, you have to have desires to do your best, to eat, to whatever. But the renunciation of desire is renunciation of the result, the fruit, the expectation to attain. You do your 100%, but let go of the outcome. That is surrendering the desires. It's with a caveat, surrendering the result, not surrendering desires as such. You cannot exist without desires. Seema, did you freeze? I think your laptop.
No, yeah, this is good.
Okay, so that was awesome. We have completed 18 chapters. It's very good. Always.
Not very good. Excellent. There was some people like me. It was really an opportunity for this whole year. We started in January and
Yes, so we've completed.
September.
Yeah, so 9 months, right? It's 9 months, and now we can take birth. It's like nine days of Navratri, 10th day is a day of birth. So now it's good. We finished during Navratri, and you can celebrate in Dasera. So it's great. It's perfect.